The restaurant shimmered like a jewel, its crystal chandeliers scattering light over crisp white tablecloths, polished silver, and the gentle hum of conversations that seemed to float like music through the air. Sarah Mitchell stood frozen at the entrance, clutching her 18-month-old son, Tommy, to her chest. Her borrowed pale rose dress felt delicate under the golden glow, and her hair, swept into a neat twist, suddenly seemed too simple, too ordinary for this world of refined elegance. She had imagined tonight countless times, walking in confidently, mingling with donors, making connections that could change the course of the Riverside Community Center. But reality was different. The babysitter had called sick at the last moment, leaving Sarah with an impossible choice: stay home or show up with Tommy. She had chosen the latter, but now, as curious glances swept across the room, a wave of self-doubt threatened to drown her courage. Her son's wide eyes reflected the sparkling chandeliers above, innocent and unknowing of her inner turmoil. And then she saw him, Daniel Lawson, the city's most respected businessman, walking toward her with a smile that would change everything. In that moment, Sarah didn't know if she would be judged, or if she would finally find the understanding she had been craving for so long. Sarah's fingers tightened around Tommy's tiny shoulders as she stepped into the restaurant, her heart pounding like a drum. Heads turned, whispers flickered across the room, and she felt the familiar sting of being an outsider. Her son's small hand rested on her shoulder, grounding her, yet amplifying her fear that she didn't belong. Then she saw him, Daniel Lawson, CEO of Lawson Industries, walking with an air of quiet authority, yet his eyes held warmth, the kind that could make even the most nervous guest feel seen. She wanted to apologize, to explain, to turn around and retreat. "I'm so sorry," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "I brought my baby. I didn't have anyone to watch him tonight. I shouldn't have come." Daniel's smile stopped her. Not the polite, distant smile she had anticipated, but one of genuine warmth. He extended his arms toward Tommy. The little boy, usually shy, hesitated only a heartbeat before leaning forward, curiosity bright in his eyes. Daniel lifted him effortlessly, settling him against his shoulder. Tommy's tiny hand found the pocket square in Daniel's jacket, and the CEO chuckled softly. "No apologies necessary," he said. "Children have a way of reminding us what truly matters, don't they?" Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. Relief, kindness, and the unspoken recognition of her struggle washed over her in an overwhelming wave. "I'm Sarah Mitchell," she managed. "I know who you are," Daniel said. "I've read your reports on the after-school program. Impressive work. And who is this fine young man?" "This is Tommy," she said, a note of pride threading through her voice. "Perfect," Daniel said gently. "Come, let me introduce you to some people." And just like that, Sarah walked through the crowded room, Tommy cradled by one of the city's most influential men as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Daniel carried him from table to table, introducing Sarah to donors and community leaders, who smiled at the child's babbling, charmed by the scene. At one point, Daniel paused by a window overlooking the city lights. He lowered his voice, softening into something more personal. "My daughter was about Tommy's age when my wife passed away, 28 years ago. I remember the overwhelming feeling of trying to balance everything: business, parenting, life, always thinking I was failing." Sarah's chest tightened. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Don't be," Daniel said firmly. "Those years taught me what strength truly is, not the kind you show in a boardroom, but the kind you show when you are exhausted, overwhelmed, and yet keep going because someone depends on you. That's the kind of strength I see in you." Tears threatened to spill. Since Tommy's father had left before his birth, Sarah had navigated single motherhood alone, juggling a full-time job at the community center, managing household responsibilities, and raising her son with love and care despite the exhaustion that sometimes left her numb. Here was a man who saw that struggle and recognized it. "Thank you," she whispered, voice catching in her throat. When Tommy grew drowsy, Daniel returned him gently to Sarah, his hand lingering on the child's back in a quiet gesture of support. "There's a quiet room just off the main hall," he said. "The staff uses it for storage, but there's a comfortable sofa. You're welcome to put him down if he needs to sleep." Sarah nodded, grateful beyond words, and Daniel accompanied her to the room, carrying her purse and Tommy's small bag. She settled Tommy on the soft sofa, covering him with the blanket she always carried. Daniel watched her for a moment, smiling. "My daughter Jennifer runs our community outreach division now," he said. "She's been asking about expanding our partnership with your center. I think you two should talk." Sarah blinked, almost unable to believe it. "That would be wonderful," she said. Daniel handed her a business card. "Call my office next week. We'll set something up. And Sarah, bring Tommy if you need to. My office has been far too serious lately. We could all use a reminder of what we're working for." By the time Sarah left the restaurant that evening, she carried not just her sleeping son, but a sense of confidence she hadn't felt in years. Several guests had expressed interest in the community center's programs. Business cards filled her purse. Yet it was Daniel's kindness that lingered most in her mind, the way he saw past appearances, the way he treated her and her son with dignity. "Let me walk you to your car," he offered, helping her through the parking lot. Her modest sedan sat humbly among luxury vehicles, yet Daniel made no sign of judgment. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling. "Not just for tonight, but for understanding, for seeing me as a person, not just a struggling single mother." Daniel's expression softened. Being a parent, especially a single parent, means making impossible choices. You'll feel like you're failing. You'll bring your child where children aren't expected. You'll disappoint people because you can't be in two places at once. But the fact that you're trying, that you're showing up, that's extraordinary. Tears finally spilled over, and Daniel handed her a handkerchief. "Call my office," he reminded her. "And remember, the people who matter will understand. The ones who don't, aren't worth your worry." The next week, Sarah did call. She met with Jennifer, Daniel's daughter, whose warmth mirrored her father's. Their meeting led to a partnership that transformed the community center's programs, bringing resources, staff, and opportunities Sarah had only dreamed of. Jennifer shared her own story, growing up with a single father building a business while still making time to be present, teaching lessons of compassion and flexibility. "He always said his best employees were the ones who had someone depending on them," Jennifer explained. "They understood responsibility. They worked with purpose. He built flexibility into our company culture because he remembered what it was like to need it himself." Sarah thought back to that night at the gala, the ease with which Daniel had held Tommy, the absence of judgment, the warmth in his eyes. It wasn't extraordinary, it was human. He had lived the struggle she was facing and had chosen to respond with empathy. Months passed. The community center flourished. Sarah expanded programs, hired staff, and finally had more time to enjoy her son's small milestones. One afternoon, Daniel visited the center again. Tommy spotted him immediately and toddled toward him. "Dan," he shouted. Daniel scooped him up effortlessly, both laughing at the reunion. Watching children play that night at the gala, Daniel said later, "I saw my younger self, scared, overwhelmed, and certain I didn't belong. I wanted you to know, you do belong." Years later, Sarah would remember that night, not for the professional success that followed, though it came, and not for the partnerships that bloomed, but for the profound lesson in human kindness. Grace appears in unexpected moments. The most powerful people remember what it feels like to be powerless. A simple act of understanding can change a life. On Tommy's 5th birthday, Sarah received a package, a children's book about kindness, inscribed, "To Tommy, who taught me that the best business meetings sometimes start with a little chaos. With warm regards, Daniel." That night, She read to Tommy, his small body curled against hers, and felt the quiet peace of knowing that kindness still existed, and that she had the power to pass it on.